The theme is heat, and the name of this is limitations. So allow me to begin by saying I admittedly cannot stand the heat and have spent a large part of my adult life staying out of the kitchen, both literally and figuratively. Because I know my limitations. As a little kid, I was becoming conscious just at the tail end of the women's movement. Remember that? ERA, anyone? Equal rights movement? Keep in mind, as I say that, I was also being raised in an uber-conservative Christian right-wing military household where it was believed if a woman played competitive sports that her uterus might shift. And there was the slight possibility of it falling directly out of her vagina onto the sporting court. That did not really matter because I did not have good hand-eye coordination and I knew my limitations. But here's the deal. During many of my formative years, I got conflicting information. So while I was watching Mary Tyler Moore date a slew of men she didn't marry, while living in a designer dreams apartment, and which she paid for herself when she wasn't throwing her hat in the air, and Jamie Summers squeezing tennis balls to death, listening to things intently and bionically and saving the nation, there were commercials being run for a product called Susie Homemaker Toys. This is a real thing. Now listen, there are still kitchen toys for kids to play with, but the implications are very different. The slogan for this line of product was, and I quote, "With Susie Homemaker you can entertain, wash dishes, clean house, launder, iron, bake all of this. And with Susie Homemaker Vanity Set, you can always look lovely." It's the answer to every girl's dream. End quote. So I don't know about you ladies, but that was not the answer to a single one of my dreams. Not even one. And I think my parents may have sensed that I was not headed in a direction they were going to be able to understand, accept, or control. I was not all that interested in the Susie Homemaker line of bullshit. I was into Barbies, no doubt. But my Barbie had a 3-story townhouse with a fucking open-air elevator, bitches. She drove a racy convertible sports car, she wore sexy power suits, and she dated Ken and G.I. Joe, and had a thing with Stretch Armstrong on the side. And trust me, he did stretch fun farther than ever. I was far more interested in my brother's toys. I thought my brother was the tits. So whatever toy he got was the toy I decided I wanted. And that did not exclude his Erector set, Lego Moon Landing set, or Hot Wheels with a stunt action track boasting the G-force loop. Even though all those toys were about assembling or building things. And I wasn't good at assembling and building things. That was one of my limitations. Yet all of those toys were more fun than the creepy doll heads on a pedestal with hair you could style. Or Living Baby. The doll you feed milk and then it pees itself and you get the joy of changing its diaper. No, thank you. I wanted to play with my brother's toys, but I wasn't a tomboy because I had limitations. I didn't play sports, I didn't climb trees, I didn't build forts, I didn't beat up boys, you know, I didn't feel the need to compete, succeed, accomplish, or achieve anything. That would have required someone to be interested in my accomplishments, so I did not get that part. I just liked my brother's toys because they belonged to my brother. But my folks kept trying to point me in the right direction with the girly playthings, so they got me two, count them two, toy sewing machines. The first one sewed with glue. And then I graduated to the Singer Junior Miss Sewing Machine that had an orangish red carrying case, and it had patterns for aprons, circle skirts, and capes. I'll let that sink in for a minute. Just a circle that you sew. I was not good at sewing. It was one of my limitations. Not being really good at the making or the building, but really only being good at the reclining and the dreaming. I, in very quick order, broke the bobbin case and rendered that sexist toy unusable and unsafe. So next they got me the Shrinky Dink kit that made fancy jewelry for the classy lassie. But after standing in front of a sweltering oven watching a few batches of those dick suckers curl up like a maple leaf on a bonfire, I lost interest and started drawing scary faces and bad words on the plastic, and then hiding the uncooked sticky plastic in underwear drawers and inside pots and pans and stuck to the underside of the toilet lid. Because that was way more fun than standing in a hot kitchen cooking that shit. So in a last-ditch attempt at making me wife material at 10 years old, my parents purchased for me the Easy Bake Oven. Okay. Do they still make these? I don't know. Yeah. Well, for those of you who are unfamiliar, which it sounds like not many, the Easy Bake Oven is an oven for ostensibly little girls that came with little packets of Betty Crocker mixes in 2 or 3 little pans, and you would add water in the packet and put it in the pan, and then the oven would cook the tiny cake or cookie using an incandescent light bulb as a heating element. Genius, right? The model I had, you would slide the pan in from the side and then watch through the glass on the front of the oven door as the cake rose and baked, which was almost exactly as much fun as watching those friggin' shrinky dicks curl up in your mom's 450-degree oven. And when the cake was done, a timer would ding, and you would use the paddle to push the cake out the other side where there was a little mock stove where it would cool before you iced it with the packet it came with, and then you could cut it maybe into 2 pieces. So 2 people could get a half a bite of something vaguely resembling a dessert. As an added bonus, kids could also get 3rd-degree burns on their hands and fingers stuck inside the device, resulting in no less than 2 amputations on record. But listen, it taught a lot of important values. The maiming was just a perk. So I didn't give a shit about this toy. But my brother, who is older and smarter, knew that if I thought he liked it, then I'd like it. So my brother wasn't interested in making cakes, but he was interested in seeing how long it would take rubber bands, cassette tapes, and Cupid dolls to melt under the heat of an incandescent bulb. It was about 3 minutes. So once that toy got the boy child stamp of approval, it was on like Donkey Kong. So after that, after I came over I suddenly overcame my obvious limitations with baking, and I baked the hell out of some cakes. So much so that I ran out of Betty Crocker packets of cake mix, and this is where my story begins. I became so adept at making these cakes that I decided it was time to have a tea party with Mummy. I lived in England at the time. So I arranged the whole thing. I set the time, I put out the tiny tea set, and then I realized I was out of cake mix, so I had to improvise. And for those of you who know me, you know that improvising is one of my limitations. My mother did her motherly duty and begrudgingly took time out of her very busy day to sit and have pretend tea with her daughter, drinking out of tiny teacups and stirring imaginary sugar with tiny spoons like the jackass I was making her out to be. I then proudly presented my mother with a cake I'd improvised and insisted that she eat it alone, as she was my guest. She took a bite of the cake, and a look came over her face that resembled confusion. She took a second bite, and the look that covered her face was then one of displeasure or distaste. But she soldiered on. After the third and final bite, what flavor cake was that? So I proudly told her that I'd made it up, and she said, "Oh, what'd you put in it?" "Flour." "Okay, and what else?" "Water." And what else? So a look came over my face that I would venture to say resembled, "What do you mean? With the packets, all you do is add water." I asked my mother what was wrong as a look had washed over her face of, let's say, nausea. Oh, nothing, sweetheart, but just so you know, flour and water makes glue. I had fed my mother an icing-covered glue cake. Which began both my campaign to avoid the kitchen for life, if at all possible, and my campaign to, if not literally, then figuratively poison my mother. I do make the food for the shows every month, and I'm getting better in the kitchen, but it doesn't come naturally to me because I am limited. And here's my point. Societally, we are told on a daily basis that we can do anything we put our minds to. And while I appreciate the inspirational intent of that message, it seems to be accompanied by an underlying insidious message that says, you're not trying hard enough. You want to be a movie star? You want to be a movie star, right? Try harder. You're just not trying hard enough. You want to go to space? Go to space, just try harder. Alex, you want to be in the WNBA? Just try hard. I can't be in the WNBA. You know why? Because I have limitations. We all have limitations. So because we all have limitations, the day we stop apologizing to the world for not being better or more or limitless is the day we take the heat off of ourselves. And trust me, when you take the heat off yourself, you're going to be a nicer person. You may even find you don't want to serve poisonous glue cakes to anybody. Boom. That's it.